Hey everyone, Lou here. It's been a while since I covered explaining the Evillious Chronicles, hasn't it? I had quite a few other projects to tackle before this one, but as promised, here's more of the Evillious Chronicles explained. As always, here's some corrections you guys help me make in the comments. This is a very overwhelming project with a lot of retcons and novels I don't have access to, so you guys have been a big help in correcting information. Okay, so Nay is actually a reincarnation of Gretel. Prim's affair with R threw off the reincarnation cycle for Hansel and Gretel, so Alan and Lily-Ann aren't reincarnations of Hansel and Gretel like I thought. Arth actually did die, and another being called the Lich brought him back to life because his soul didn't want to die, and that's particularly the reason why Lily-Ann, Alan, and Nay are all irregulars, because like, no kid is gonna pop out normal if their dad's a mud golem. Lich is also Michella's brother from her life when she worked for Livia Barisal. Leonhardt actually adopted Germaine in an attempt to create a hostage situation for the Byzantine Empire because she was a descendant of Bonica Conchita, but I guess that plan kind of fell through and he raised her as his actual daughter. Lily-Ann didn't believe Alan was her twin because Iluka convinced her that everyone's gotta look alike somewhere in the world. Considering how many people look alike in this damn series, maybe she's not wrong. It was retconned that Clarith is a descendant of Satyrace's Venomania, so now I guess she's just ostracized for being albino. And lastly, Alan was ordered to kill Michella, but obviously he had a fat-ass crush on her, so he couldn't do it. Instead, Nay disguised herself as Alan to please her mother Prim, because as I said, Prim is a massive bitch. On to the aftermath of Story of Evil. Okay, so we're going back in time a bit, right around the time when Lily-Ann and Clarith became friends in the convent. Remember when I mentioned near the end a woman named Mykina Freezus? Well, her husband Keel Freezus was actually another clone of asshole Seth Twilight. You may be wondering how that's even possible when the only beings alive from Seth's time period are Iluka and Irina, and they're only alive via body switching and evil twins. Well, that's because Keel was quite literally frozen in a test tube as a baby, and later awakened via an earthquake in the kingdom of Marlon. From there, he met Mykina and became an extremely successful businessman in Elfagort and later Lucifenia. He and Mykina then got married and had 3 children, Yukina, Shaw, and Ailey, with Yukina in particular being a very gifted historian and writer at an incredibly young age. Okay, so Irina had given the Sword of Lust to Mykina, Mykina then gave it to Keel, and then Keel gave it to Kyle. It was this gift that is the reason Kyle fell madly in love and completely obsessed with Michella, despite barely knowing each other beyond platonic conversations. If you're wondering why he didn't have the same lust powers as Satyrace's, it's because he didn't make a contract and just being in contact with the sword made him nuts. This caused a lot of problems for Kyle emotionally, and while Irina later extracted the demon of lust from Kyle, Prim Marlon stepped in and decided for the demon of pride, Marianette, to possess Kyle instead. This pride began to take over Kyle, so he began to overrun the Lucifenian Empire now that the entire royal family was supposedly dead, and handed Marlon over to his mother. But he planned to take over the entirety of the continent of Evillious as part of his possession. At some point, Nay also tells him that it was Iluka, her apprentice Gumilia, and Germaine who killed Michella instead of Lily-Ann, so Kyle actually ordered a witch hunt for the 3 of them. Iluka and Gumilia in particular actually did try to help Kyle though, so they actually took back the Sword of Lust and were trying to go for the Pride Mirrors, but failed before they could. This situation just caused an entire war, with Kyle and Nay creating alliances and wars with other nations in an attempt to capture Iluka and Gumilia, even going so far as to use the Glass of Gluttony, now known as the Conchita Glass, to reanimate the dead as their soldiers. If you remember, that's something the glass can do, as seen with Conchita way earlier, as she had basically turned her servants into zombies after she ate them. Later though, Kyle's tyranny really only calmed down when he met Yukina. Yukina's love for storytelling and her curiosity managed to calm Kyle down for a time, showing their close platonic bond that grows closer later. Except Germaine shows up just before Kyle could confront Yukina's bodyguard, who was actually Gumilia. Jermaine confronted Kyle and she tried to remind him that she didn't do shit and that Alan confessed that he killed Michelle right before he died, but Kyle stops her and says that Keel told him that Kyle was lying. Which, I mean, yes, he was, but at this point in the story, I don't know if Keel is saying that because he's under Prim Marlon's thumb, or because he actually has the intuition that Alan was lying. At this point, arguing with Kyle turned him into a demon where Gumilia and Yukina began to flee because no one wants to fight a big old demon. As he began to attack Gumilia, Yukina pointed out that he wasn't himself anymore and was completely giving in to demonic possession. But he didn't listen and it caused the two of them to flee into the Millennium Tree Woods. Though, I guess new Millennium Tree Woods, since Clarith planted the new Millennium Tree seed that's Michelle's reincarnated soul? I don't know, but Kyle eventually found them in the forest and nearly killed Jermaine and Gumilia, with Gumilia even attempting an exorcism, but it was Michelle who succeeded by conducting a singing spell that just kind of plinked the demon right out of him. Freed from the demon of pride and losing all his memories from the last 2 weeks and later 5 years being hazy, he knew he had to confront his mother. He brought Yukina, Jermaine, and Gumilia with him, where he later met with Keel again, who told him the truth that Prim had purposefully gotten Rillian possessed by a demon in hopes to destroy the kingdom of Elphegor to strengthen the control the kingdom of Marlon had. Loving his mother and in denial she could be so evil, he decided he'll confront her himself for the truth. Except a servant had basically told Kyle that Nay was his sister, and it sent him into shock and grief that Nay was used just as much as he was by Prim. He also met with Iluka for some advice and returned Yukina and her father to the Freeze's mansion, although Kyle did notice that Mikina was playing with a red cat for some reason. With a knot in his gut, he gave Iluka and Gumilia a ton of weapons and brought Jermaine with him to confront his mother at the castle. Thus begins the song Hamby Clock Tower, which is one of my favorite post-Daughter of Evil songs. An epic battle begins with Jermaine and Kyle climbing up the tower and fighting off assassins, where Kyle finally found his mother and Nay together. Prim in particular had the doll of Sloth, or the Clockworker's doll, in her lap, which I don't think I mentioned before, but the doll of Sloth is possessed by Eve Moonlit. And if you remember, Michelle's appearance was created from Eve Moonlit. So because of that whole mess, Kyle thinks it's a doll of Michelle that his mother has used to taunt him instead of a vessel of sin. Nay had stolen the glass of Conchita from Kyle and fled with it, using it to command the dead, while Prim confirmed that, yep, she was totally using her kids as demonic vessels, and even saying she wants Kyle to get repossessed again so all her children can be vessels of sin, including herself, and explains the doll is actually the original sinner, Eve Moonlit. Also, yeah, Prim has her disease, which I've said before is a disease that makes you evil and destructive, but clearly the story gives zero redeeming qualities to her before and after contracting her disease, which is why in Hamby Clock Tower, Kyle is constantly questioning if that's really his mother or a demon. I always thought that was a very clever depiction in what it's like for someone finding out their parent is abusive as they grow older. However, Nay returned to tell Prim that she killed all of the soldiers Kyle brought with him, but was left ignored as her mother's attention was solely on Kyle, as it has always been from Nay's perspective. Fed up, probably possessed, and obviously going nuts from all the experiments Irina conducted on her, Nay brutally killed Prim and disassociated from it so badly she thought Kyle killed her. Kyle knew that his sister was too far gone and felt responsible for this dysfunction in some way, so he planned to, I guess, kill Nay to set her soul free, except using the glass of Conchita so much began to almost turn Nay into Bonica Conchita, even appearing in her famous red dress, but Kyle didn't give up and continued to fight his sister. Showing his growth as someone who fell for 2 different demonic possessions, Kyle strongly rejected the demon of lust, who offered a sword strong enough to defeat Nay. In a particular strike, she nearly killed Kyle by stabbing him in the chest, but a protection from Michelle blocked it off, where a comment from Nay made Kyle realize that Nay was the one who killed Michelle all along. Just before he could be killed for real this time, Jermaine stepped in and helped knock Nay unconscious. Well, Kyle was ready to kill her, but Jermaine offered to hold her prisoner instead, so Kyle didn't have to carry the sin of killing his sister on him. Jermaine and Kyle brought Nay to Iluka, Gumilia, Yukina, and Keel. Iluka attempted to perform some kind of exorcism to help Nay, but it didn't work, and instead everyone was blinded by fire magic and temporarily fainted. Kyle in particular had an anime subconscious goodbye with Nay. Bonica, because remember she's a new demon of gluttony, tells Kyle that Nay was never Nay, but a reincarnation of Gretel, who is now a demon. She tells him that Gretel was supposed to be reborn as Rillian, but that all got fucked up by Priam, so now Nay has to come with her, where a child like Nay apologizes for everything she put her brother through. Also, Bonica calls Kyle the soul of Adam, which doesn't make sense to me when Adam's soul is possessing the spoon of greed, but whatever, maybe it's because the kingdom of Marlon had the spoon for so long, I don't know. When everyone woke up, Jermaine and Iluka were stunned to see that Nay was murdered and the vessels of sin were taken. Oopsies. Kyle then holds a mini funeral for his mom and sister where Yukina leaves because her mom has now gone missing, so she's gonna go find her while her father was injured from the blast. Oh, and prior to this, Yukina was very good friends with Clarith and saw her as an older sister figure. She goes to visit the convent Rillian and Clarith live at with Jermaine as her sort of bodyguard, where they eventually find out that her mother was possessed by Irina. It's complicated, but basically because, again, Prim is a bitch, she threatened Makina into using the spoon of greed and transporting vessels of sin or something like that, otherwise Prim would kill her husband and children. Because Prim died and Irina's vessel was already very old at this point, she took over Makina's body and was using the spoon of greed to fight back against Jermaine while Yukina begged for her mother to be released from Yukina's control. As she was attacked by her own mother possessed, Alan's soul protected her because he knew she would be a very special person who would be able to carry the truth of the story of evil for future generations instead of a story filled with rumors. Rillian, going by Rin, tried to help but was attacked again and was only saved by Bonica Conchita and Nay's spirits. Foiled again, Irina tried to flee in her cat body as she released Mikina, but Jermaine managed to attack her. Except, uh-oh! In a plot twist, it wasn't Irina's cat body, but instead a plush toy decoy one, which means Irina is still out there and will likely cause trouble again in the future. At least for now, she'll be quiet until everyone in the story right now dies, I guess. For now, everything is a happily ever after. Yukina became an extremely important historian for the time period and wrote Rillian's true story for people to never forget what really happened at this time, while Kyle stepped down as king of Lucifinian and Marlon, becoming a painter instead while Yukina joined him to write stories. There, they discovered Mikulia Caliground and I guess the Venomania incident, bringing about the story of sin so far to the world of the future. Meanwhile, Iluka and Gumilia traveled east to the kingdom of Mukoku. Considering they lost the sword, doll, mirrors, and spoon, they have to at least find the scissors. Except a guard tells them they can't enter Mukoku, but they keep trying until Iluka eventually blows the wall down with magic and finds literally nothing behind the wall, so the guard was Delulu. They give up and head to the neighboring kingdom of Jakuku instead. I have trouble lining up the dates, but I think this has to do with some kind of apocalyptic event that occurred now or later in Mukoku. About 20 years after the final events of Story of Evil, peace never lasts long in this world as we're back again to Irina Clockworker. With a doll of sloth in hand, she hears about Marx Felix's firstborn child being stillborn, and here we go again with Irina fucking shit up. I had hoped to cover all of the story of Sloth here because it is actually kind of short, but I'm wrong and we still have a lot to cover during the events of the story of Sloth, and some more details I missed previously because it wasn't brought up before, like Irina actually owns an assassin organization, but we're not there yet. Tune in next time where we finally cover the story of Sloth. This took me about 2 songs and 2 light novels, which is just so crazy to me that so much story can happen in 2 songs and novels, but welcome to the Evillious Chronicles. Wait until you get to the afterlife portion where 1 song could be its own video. What did you guys think of the epilogue for Story of Evil? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I really loved it, especially Kyle's development and lore droplets, but you guys let me know down below what you think. Hey guys, thanks for watching! If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new. If any of you would like to help support my channel in any possible way, my Ko-fi page is down below in the description, along with all of my social media. For any subscribers, new or old, who'd like to help with video ideas, or maybe just want to talk about anime or something, I have a fan server linked down below. See you next time!